All I can hear right now is 3-6 Mafia. Boom, 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 boom. Let's get down on the floor, on the floor. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that's not the way that either one of these women that's gonna join us would want me to start that. So we're gonna back it up. We're gonna back it up and say, hey y'all. I don't know, that's what I've been like. Molly, we're the same age. I know you know that song, and don't pretend like you don't know it. Love it. Okay, we're gonna get some beautiful people to join. Why isn't it letting me accept you? Okay, I pushed it a little harder that time. Let me join. Okay, I just needed to be patient.
Hello, lovely ladies.
Hi.
This is so fun.
Little beaches. So excited.
Are we doing like a dance party little thing going on there?
I know. I would be totally fine with that. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm right here.
I mean, I just want to put it out there that I do believe they did win an Oscar at one time for Best Song for Hustle and Flow. That's a bit of Black culture for you there.
I did not know that, but
you know,
it does not shock me in any way.
It wouldn't be inappropriate.
I think we should try to learn some random new thing each time. And you just taught me a little something, right?
Yeah.
I've got something for you though. Something for you. Okay. I just saw a study recently that people who swear live longer. This is very important. Molly, you may not know this, but the last time we were on a live together, I slipped a few times. A couple words came out. The fact is, Jerry, I'm going to live longer than you.
You're definitely both going to live longer than me. So there you go.
You can practice on this live.
Okay.
If you're feeling it, if you're feeling a word coming, you just let it right out.
That happened. Okay.
Let it out. Yeah. Okay, so Molly, please introduce yourself. Yeah. Ooh, wait. Can I do it instead?
Yes.
I've been waiting for this moment. I love when people introduce someone that they really like and they give them this long list, and then the person has to sit there awkwardly and they're like, no, I'm not done. So Molly Brinkman, I don't remember where you live, but I do think that it's in Tennessee.
Yeah. South of Nashville area.
Well, it's one of my favorite states, so I held on to that.
I do. Here. I
found you, I don't know, I feel like it's been so long ago and we're such good friends, you know, even though that's
never met.
Yeah, we've never met. It's a beautiful example of a parasocial relationship, because I feel like I know so many things about you, but this is what most people know you for, is doing the thing that we all dog people, all want to do, but none of us just do it or talk about it, and it's the breeds. It's the difference of the breeds, and the reason that it's so cool the way you do it is because it's so nuanced, because you literally have to have your hands on thousands of dogs to know that information, like for a long time, and still love them and still have a joy and exuberance, and it's so infectious. And you get so into character, and I watched every single video multiple times to make sure that I didn't miss exactly one thing that was going on, and I'm like, that's definitely a Vishla. Like, I feel so seen and heard when I watch your stuff as a dog nerd. So that's what I think.
It's a thing.
Genetics are a thing.
They are. I know people, it's all in how you raise them. Not according to Miss Molly. You just watch those videos and you say genetics is a thing.
Yeah. That would be such an interesting, it's one of my questions, like how would we collaborate as trainers and veterinarians, like, and you just told me, like, a trainer would have to take you, Molly, in whichever breed you choose and start trying to employ their ideology in a comedy sort of way on you, and seeing little Sophia with her Stanley cup and her bow because she's
Yes.
a Yorkie. And they're like, do a tight heel. And she's like, don't touch me. I don't like that. You know, that like just in my mind was like, any person could understand, wow, I'm asking.
Yes.
What I'm asking is ridiculous. I'm gonna let you talk. It was a great tie it all together. Why we're here about veterinary medicine and training. But you're so great about breeds. What is your background? Tell us a little bit about your background, so that the people that are watching that are like, I wonder where she went to school, and
yes, all the fun things. So I live in the place where I grew up now. I have not always lived here, but I am back. And so I grew up here, and I grew up in a very agricultural setting. My family, my granddad was a cattle farmer, so I grew up like in that world, and I rode horses growing up always. And I went to undergrad at the University of Tennessee, which is where I went to vet school.
Ooh.
And I always knew I wanted to be a vet. I thought I was going to be a dairy cow vet when I started vet school. It's funny. But then I was a horse vet. I went after vet school. I went to Western Colorado and did a surgical equine internship in the Valley of Aspen, Colorado.
Oh yeah, you said something to me about that.
The rodeo.
That's fascinating.
Because Bella Hadid was at the Carbondale Rodeo, which is insane. It's this tiniest little rodeo in where we lived. So anyway, I was like, I know that arena.
I feel so in the know that I know a little part of that story, because you were like, I posted that, I was like, Bella Hadid liked my reel, and it wasn't like some random viral reel. It was like a genuine one from my heart about horses and my daughter, and I was like, oh my god! And you casually were like, oh yeah,
I know
where that is. Rodeo. I was like.
Well, I immediately called a friend there, and I was like, were you there? Did you know? And she was like, I was not there, and I haven't heard anything about it. I'm like, okay, fine. So yes, I was a horse vet first. I did an internship there, but the practice where I interned also had a small animal clinic. And I worked in small animal as an assistant before vet school full time for a year. So I was very familiar with both worlds. I decided not to become a horse surgeon, which was my plan at the time. And so I did mixed practice in Colorado, like ambulatory practice, cows, horses. I was the camelid vet of the western slope of Colorado. I love alpacas. Fun fact about me. Yes.
Llama
Are
owner.
you?
It's like Denise.
Oh,
chiming in because Denise to talk about her.
I had some of the coolest alpaca and llama clients in Colorado. Like, really? I can't even tell you. Yes, I had a client.
This is making me so happy.
She had an alpaca farm, and I think she had like 200.
Wow.
And they were like calm little angel alpacas, just like would coo at you and let you do anything. All of them, all 200 of them. She was amazing. Cass was her name. But anyway, we were there for 2 years, and then we came home to Tennessee. My husband is originally from South Florida, but all of his family's in Tennessee now. So we met in college, dated for a long, long time, got married during vet school. We came home to Tennessee. I tried to do mixed practice in a rural area here. That did not go very well, and I quit doing that after like 8 months. That job was terrible, and I had to leave that job. And so the best option was an exclusive small animal clinic. So that's where I pivoted. And so I have been doing small animal practice for the last 6 years. And I do love it. I miss seeing horses every day, but I do love my job. That's who I am.
Wow.
As a vet.
Can't ask for more than that. You love your job. Life is good.
Life is good. I have human children. I have a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. And I have 5 chickens that I'm looking at right now. They're out there. And I have a black lab, Cooper. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Do you ever, in conversation, do people ever say, oh, you look like a lab person when you say you have a lab?
I don't know that anyone's ever told me that, but
did.
you just did. People do on social media. People are like, so you're the Labrador Retriever, right? That's your natural character.
Busted.
Well, okay, so now let's go down that path for a minute. Jerri, what kind of dog are you?
Me?
Yeah.
To me, I'm very clearly some kind of bully breed.
That's what I was gonna say.
Lots of jazz, lots of zest, lots of, but I could. And then once I do, I can't control myself, but I'm also a stimulation seeker.
Have you ever seen my reel of if bully breeds went to therapy?
What?
You
No?
you need to watch it.
What is this?
It's like, is there something wrong with me? People like run away from me when I'm walking down the street. They won't let me stay in hotels. It's old. It's good. You need to watch it. Yeah. It's very nuanced too.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're like a Belgian, Denise. You don't think that?
I think I'm a purpose-bred mix. I think I'm a mix. No, I'm not a doodle, but I think I'm a border collie cross because you know that very serious, kind of intense and serious.
Yeah.
But I do have it's almost like I'm a cross between a golden retriever because I'm all happy and friendly, like people.
Well, the cussing though, the cussing.
That's the border collie. Maybe it's healer.
A little riffraff.
I was gonna say
might be a little bit of Australian cattle dog, that edgy kind of and then border collie. But I tell you, I cannot walk 20 feet down the street without greeting people. Hello, how are you? Oh my God, I love your hair. I just, it's a slow trip. My kids cannot stand to go in public with me because I embarrass them.
Yeah,
because you sit down at the restaurant, you chat with the waitress to the point they sit down at the table with you. That's me. That's and I love good. Control the chat. Have a chat. So no border collie does that, right? They've got rules.
Yeah,
so that's my inner golden.
Yeah, I see.
It's just a definite healer. I'm glad you guys are coming up with breeds because I like healers. I really actually love Australian cattle dogs. In my metal, which dog next? That was way high. I really do like them. And border collie probably is my next. I love Belgians, but Belgians are so weird. And I'd like to think I have more control of my emotional range than the average Belgian. So fearful and so angry all the time. I am not fearful. I am not angry. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
That's fearful and angry.
Something confident, not fearful, but can focus.
I think I'm a cattle dog. I think just listening to all that, I don't know what to do about the social part though. But I would say the root is probably cattle dog.
You're like a corgi healer.
Oh, that would, yeah.
The cussing. There comes the corgi.
Mm-hmm. But corgis can also be so happy friendly too.
Oh, they're such great dogs.
I love a corgi.
Yeah. They're cute.
Mm-hmm.
None of you are a doodle. Nope. There's no doodle here.
No doodle.
None of us. Did somebody think I was anything other than a bully? I've never ever heard anybody say anything to me.
Are people saying? What are they saying?
I don't know.
Ridgy. Someone said Ridgy. I could see some Ridgy energy. Yeah. I'm a little biased about Ridgies though because the Ridgeback I've known the most was the equine surgeon I worked under in my internship, Joanna. She had a Rhodesian Ridgeback, Zuri, and she was the best dog. And I think she skewed my vision.
I love those. Mm-hmm. I love those kind of dogs.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Irish Wolfhound at one of the places I worked named Legend. And I was like, wow, it was just, it's just such a cool memory to have. And he was a great dog. Okay. So tell me, I want to know this. I want to know a lot of things. What makes you, no, take the you out. What makes a great veterinarian right now in 2024?
I think the most important skill a veterinarian can have is communication. Effective and empathetic communication. I don't care.
You don't say.
I don't care what you know.
Such a
I
good
don't
answer.
care how skilled you are. It doesn't matter. If you can't explain to someone or help them understand or help them see why you want to do what you want to do for their pet. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I
So,
like my vet
sorry, Denise.
is quite good. I like her very much. She's new to me. My other vet retired. And you know what I really appreciate about her? She'll say something like, do you want to do Bordetella this time? Or did you want to do, like, she is aware, she doesn't know I'm in the dog world because I don't tell people that, but she knows that I clearly have a clue. So when she says your dog has IVDD, I don't say, what's that? She says it and then she spells it out and I'm like, all right. Like, I obviously know more than the average person. I like that she intuited that and that she asks, do you want to do Bordetella this time? And then I think to myself, is this dog going to go places where I think I need that or not? And I say, yes, I do, or no, I don't think my dog's at risk right now. And she says, okay. And she moves on down. Like here's your options. I respect that you seem to have a clue. When I thought my dog was going to get a wee bit manhandled over a vaccine, he's a little guy. I said, look, this dog is not a problem. So I need to hold him myself. You're causing a problem when there's no problem. And the vet actually came back in the room, looked at the situation, and she said, do you want to hold the dog? I said, yeah. She came over, did the vaccine, and said, when you come back in 2 weeks for your follow-up, tell him to bring me in and we'll do it again. I was like, hallelujah. Like, so clean. Loved working with her. I appreciate she tells me what she knows because she's the vet, and then I make a decision. And it's just such a nice relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think an awareness of who you're talking to as a client is important. I think the best job anyone can have other than like a job in the animal space before you go to vet school is waiting tables at a restaurant. It's what I did for 10 years before I went to vet school.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I was a server.
Yes, I think everyone should. Yes, I think everyone should do that in their life. I worked at Carrabba's for 10 years, and I freaking love waiting tables. Like, if I could take, like, truly, like, I have dreams about waiting tables, like, because I miss it.
That's precious. That is precious.
Very weird.
I have this overwhelming urge to say I used to wait tables at Hooters.
Oh my!
I did not.
I love it.
Oh. But right now I almost wish I did. Because the stories would be really, really good. Did you really, Jerry?
Were you a Hooters?
Absolutely, I was a Hooters.
Did you make a lot of?
Who do you think you're talking to?
Did you make a lot of money?
Yes, and it was. And I'm gonna tell you, it was one of the best jobs that I ever had in my life. And I drove this massive K5 Blazer with like 37s, like a 9-inch, like crazy lift, and it was like boom, 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 and I would drive up and jump out of my sweatpants. Because you can't wear your Hooters uniform outside of the restaurant now.
Right.
Ooh.
I had to cover up. I didn't have any tattoos at that time. I had like a couple on my back, but you had to cover them up with makeup because Hooters girls can't have tattoos. And you had to wear your hair always down or half up. And all of the women that worked there were smart. Some of them were in school. Some of them were looking for husbands. Some of them were. But they were all very good at what they did. And all you had to do was remember a very large menu and be personable with people that were there to eat lunch. I only worked during the day. And ride around on roller skates. That's it.
Sounds fun.
And it's fun. And you know, if you put women being subjective aside, because that's kind of an ethical thing, like where are your morals on that? I don't know. If you set that aside, what it forces you to do is be in these hours long where you're paying attention to the details of taking care of someone else. Mm-hmm. And I think we're so internalized because the world's really difficult. And so we get into our, thing, and our phones help us do that even more, that we forget forget how powerful that tool is in learning. And I'm so glad that you said it. Like one of my Chelsea, the one that I've been talking about for years and years, one of the besties that helps me run Tulsa Pack, really. If I could say anything about her and any job she's ever done, I met her when she worked at Waffle House.
There you go.
And that's like when I think of Waffle House, I think of her. And I will purposely go to Waffle Houses because it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing.
It's
so, Molly,
yeah.
We had a bunch of topics. So Jerri sends me this list, and I'm like, is your goal to blow up the internet?
Oh, no.
Like, I know. Like, hey, let's talk about raw feeding. Okay, she didn't put that on the list, but you might as well have. You put everything else on the list.
Yeah.
And I said, well.
I made a different one, too, so I have more.
I know. Oh, okay. But I said, well, why don't we just ask people? Like, list out the topics and say, which one do you want us to hit up? Do you want to do that?
You
All
can
right, read it off.
Ask me anything you want.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. Okay. Oh, my God. You guys have been talking, and
All right, audience, listen carefully, okay? Because you get to tell us which of these topics makes you go, oh, yeah, that one for sure.
You want me to tell you that? Or
No,
Jerri, you're going to say it?
I'm going to say the topics. And Enzo just came in. He says hi to everybody.
Hello, Enzo.
Topics. And we're going to let people choose, and then we'll talk about it.
Let the people choose.
Okay.
Number one.
People.
Let the people choose.
We are very, very democratic here. The people get to speak.
I love it.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of women sitting here, so it's going to get done properly. Anyway, medications.
Behavioral meds.
Behavioral issues. Just call it that. That's the first topic.
Boring.
Snooze. The second one is what is your hope for the future of veterinary medicine? Like, let me rephrase it. Like, if you could change something really fundamental and significant about your job that would impact the future. So, hope for future of veterinary medicine. And then I'm gonna stop, and I'm gonna let you two come up with something because I don't want to be overwhelming.
What happened to the spay neuter?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, spay neuter, pediatric spay, yay, nay, joint disease, the pros and cons, whatever, that gets people all riled up. Doesn't that get people excited?
Yes.
Spay neuter.
Food, what to feed your dog gets people riled up.
Oh,
when to spay and neuter.
Vaccinations.
Oh,
should you vaccinate? How often should you vaccinate?
Yeah.
That's a good one. You can get.
Yeah, you want to get trying to be all, and you guys are trying to be all. She's like, these are your ideas, Jerri.
I told you your ideas. You sent them to me. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, the list was just like, what is this, like a how to upset people in the shortest amount of time? Like, I was like, what are you doing?
That's why I'm trying to learn how to police my own behaviors. And so if I just tell you what my ideas are, you'll pump out the things that aren't that outrageous.
Okay.
What do you want?
I'm looking.
I'm
looking at the comments. We can talk about all of those things.
Lepto. Ooh. Please talk about lepto.
Okay, let's talk about vaccines.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk about vaccines.
Let's talk about vaccines. Okay. So, for a long, long time in the vet world across the board, there were a lot of veterinarians, because of the science that was put in front of them, that did vaccines for your combo vaccine, so your distemper parvo combo vaccine, your 4 or your 5-way, and rabies every year, because that's what they were told we should do. And the science about vaccines and the length of immunity and protection has evolved very slowly in the vet world. And so as it has evolved, there are vets and vet practices who jumped on board of, okay, we don't need to vaccinate every year. 3 years per the literature is enough for those 2 vaccines. So that's what we're going to switch to. So not all vet clinics have done that. And so you still find practices that are vaccinating for rabies every single year. They're vaccinating for the distemper parvo combo every single year. And that is unnecessary per the science. And so if you're at a practice who's doing that, they're not trying to harm your pet. They just haven't changed yet. And if you request to only have your vaccines every three years because that's what science says is sufficient, then I would hope your clinic would be open to that. And if they're not, I would seriously consider finding a clinic that is, or that just does that as a practice. Have I worked in practices where this has been discussed and the men in charge said, well, if we do the vaccines every year, that's going to get them in the door because they have to come for their vaccine.
Correct. That's been my experience as well.
And so, I'm at a practice that was pretty old school for a long time. I came in 2 years ago and we've changed a ton. That was the plan with me coming, and we switched to 3-year vaccines. They were just doing it because that's the way they had always done it, and they had no issue with switching. It has been a transition for clients. Some of them don't like it. A lot of them do like it. So it's really not very controversial, the 3-year versus 1 year anymore. But our dogs really should be vaccinated for those 2 core vaccines every 3 years, or they should be titered for that every at least 3 years. And titers versus vaccines get a little hairy because for rabies, there are no legally established titers.
When technicians hear the word titer, we're all like,
I know.
Just any kind. It's like, God dang it.
I know. I know. But it's the world we're in, and it's what people want, right? And so titers are not cheap. They cost us a lot to send to a lab. The thing about titers is for rabies, there's no legally established titer level that says, okay, your dog is protected from rabies, and if your dog bites another dog or a person, their titer level exempts them from the normal legal quarantine protocols. There's no legal establishment of that. So that's where it gets tricky, because yes, I can run a rabies titer on a patient and say, okay, yeah, your dog's probably not going to get rabies if they get bit by a rabid animal, but I can't, the state is not going to say, okay, yeah, you're good, right?
Well, that's my next question, and somebody asked it in there. So what is the bridge between that science actually going into legislation? Because the mandates are that they have to have the rabies every year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of states that are like that. So you just have to abide by those mandates then, right?
Yeah, and there are several veterinary organizations and animal organizations who have lobbyists and are involved in trying to pass legislation for these kinds of things. I don't think the rules and the regulations for rabies are going anywhere anytime soon, because rabies is fatal to people, right? And so the One Health establishment, which is the bridge between human medicine and veterinary medicine, is, it's most important that we keep our humankind healthy, right? And so the other thing is the rates of actual issues because of a rabies vaccine are extremely low. Issues that are life-threatening, issues that are life-changing for our pets, they're actually fairly non-existent, despite what people say or believe, because their pet had a rabies vaccine. And so that's what I try to.
It's that stinking lepto that's causing all the reactions.
So lepto is a soapbox of mine.
Let's talk about it. People are asking about it.
Let's talk about it.
What is lepto? So lepto stands for leptospirosis, but explain what that is to everybody and why their dog is.
Yes. So leptospirosis is a bacterial infection. It's a bacteria. And dogs and humans can become infected with leptospirosis, and it can be life-threatening to both species. It often causes kidney and or liver failure. And it is zoonotic, which is why it can be in both animals and people. So rodents, small mammals, will carry leptospirosis. They will harbor the bacteria in their urine. So they shed it in their urine. Their urine is in our environment and in areas of the world that have that bacteria endemic to the area. We'll have it in the soil, in water, particularly in standing water. And so dogs can become infected with that bacteria if they ingest soil, water,
Yeah.
a rodent that's infected with it, something like that.
Say an example of how that happens all the time when a dog is on a walk with a dog, their owner, parent, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so a dog's on a walk, they're sniffing the ground, they see something on the ground they want to try, they lick the ground because they're trying to get the candy wrapper so they can lick soil that's infected. They find a puddle they think looks nice, they jump in it. It's actually very easy to contract leptospirosis.
I yell at Enzo on every walk when he's just gulping out of puddles. I'm like, lepto, and he obviously gets his vaccine, but
yeah, and so it is in areas where it's endemic, where it's present in the environment. It is very dangerous, and there's this old myth that the vaccine for leptospirosis is dangerous. And that is founded in some truth because the vaccine used to be more reactive than other vaccines. So there used to be a higher rate of adverse reactions to the leptospirosis vaccine. And there are different serovars, so different flavors of lepto, and so the vaccines cover a combination of them. But the vaccine was changed, I think, 15 years ago. And so the vaccine is totally different. I think some of the issue was like the preservatives that were used in conjunction with the actual vaccine. And so it is very safe now. There are many studies that show it is not more reactive than, say, your distemper parvo modified live vaccine.
So what about scatter feeding? So I teach scatter feeding. I guess Denise probably teaches that too. What about? I mean, this is why my dog gets lepto, because he's all over nature like this, which is, I thought, how dogs were supposed to be living, and now we have these cool things like vaccines that can keep them from getting some of this stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think about scatter feeding?
You mean like increasing the risk of that?
Yeah.
Like lepto? Yeah. I mean, anytime a dog's face is in the ground, they can be exposed to it. And
would you let your dog's face be in the ground looking for food?
Oh, yeah.
She has a lab, Jerri.
Okay.
A lab.
He's a lab.
You think the benefit? I just want to be clear that a veterinarian's saying this while I look into the camera directly.
Okay, we all take on some risk for a reward, right? So, is my dog vaccinated for leptospirosis? Yes, he is. It's a very good vaccine. It provides very good protection. Am I going to throw food in a shallow, yucky puddle for him to go find? No, I am not. So water, it's a much easier for them to pick it up in water than just soil. Am I going to throw it in like muddy, swampy soil? No, I'm not. But my dry yard grass, fine. I'm not worried.
Good.
How many dogs actually get lepto? Like if you just know in the United States per year, how common is this?
So we don't know because a lot of cases of lepto go undiagnosed. So what happens when a dog? Yeah, we have no idea because, and here's like a great example. Dogs with lepto, they get kidney disease, right? So they get kidney failure. They go into kidney failure often.
Yeah.
They go into liver failure. There are 20 different reasons for a dog to go into kidney failure and liver failure. Right. So there's no like telltale sign like, oh, this dog's kidney failure is because of lepto. Now, there are things that a smart veterinarian can pick up on. You know, hey, this dog's last blood work was totally fine. This came on acutely. This doesn't really make sense. They're not responding to things. There are clues. But unless you send out testing for leptospirosis, you're not There are many dogs, I'm sure, that have been euthanized because they're in fulminant kidney liver failure and they had lepto and nobody knew it.
Is it a yearly vaccine?
It is because it's bacterial. It is an annual.
And I am not inclined to, I will go to my vet freely. However, I have a dog who does not go to the vet easily. Let's say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I will do some vaccines at home, depending on what they are.
Yeah.
Is this one I'm allowed? Can I buy this one and do this one at home or no?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you can buy lepto only at the co-op or whatever. I know you can get a 5-way. I'm pretty sure you can get a 5-way that has, or a 7-way that has lepto in it. Are you looking,
Yeah, I'd
Jerri?
rather just isolate that one bit.
I don't think that you can get a single lepto outside of a wholesaler.
See, I thought lepto was always the standalone. I didn't even know you could get it in a 5-way or 7-way.
Well, yeah, Molly, did they stop? When I worked for doctors, they stopped comboing it because of the reaction, and they were like, "Wait a minute, what's going on?"
No, we give it as a combo all the time.
Okay.
So like our dogs, our patients get the distemper parvo combo with lepto. It's all together once every 3 years, and then the 2 years in between they get the lepto only.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
So yeah, lepto vaccination is important. I worked in downtown Nashville for a brief stint for a corporate group, and it was a bunch of like high-rise little dogs that lived in apartments in the city, and definitely diagnosed lepto in patients.
Wow.
So sometimes people don't vaccinate their dogs because like, oh, they're little dogs. They're inside most of the time. I'm like, I'm sorry, but your Yorkie is the first dog that's going to be rummaging around outside and things. So they definitely should be vaccinated.
Okay. How about Bordetella? Do you do that one?
So Bordetella is a lifestyle vaccine. And as I choke on my Coke Zero,
vaccine.
It is we call it Bordetella, influenza, and lepto are technically lifestyle vaccines. I don't agree with that with lepto, but that's what people say. Bordetella is something important for people to understand. The kennel cough vaccine protects dogs about oh my gosh. Protects.
Sorry.
Mine will probably show up in a minute. Protects dogs against Bordetella bronchoseptica. And that is one of the most dangerous forms of kennel cough a dog can get. And it's deadly. And so we vaccinate against that because dogs get kennel cough all the time. Dogs that are vaccinated for Bordetella get kennel cough. They're going to get it still if they're in a lot of boarding daycare situations, but they're going to probably get a milder version of it, or it's not going to be Bordetella bronchoseptica. So they're probably not going to die. And so that's why we give them the kennel cough vaccine. We vaccinate a lot of our patients for Bordetella. We have a lot of clients who live in heavily populated neighborhoods, so their dogs are face to face with other dogs on the regular, on a walk in the middle of the neighborhood. But especially dogs who are going to daycare or getting boarded on a regular basis, they're the ones that are going to get kennel cough, and so it's a good idea to have them protected from Bordetella. I think that's a very important thing for people to understand, is you're not preventing kennel cough in general.
So somebody earlier asked about the lepto vaccine. Their concern was, does it actually cover all of the strains of lepto? Because, they say there's 20 strains of lepto and the vaccine covers one or something.
Yeah, so there's a lot of science, a lot of research that goes into those vaccines, and so the vaccine can change, just like kind of like how a flu vaccine changes. So it can change based on what serovars we're wanting to protect against. But so no, it's not going to cover every single one, but it's going to cover the ones that are most prevalent in dogs and the ones that cause the most issues in dogs.
Is there a way to find out if your area is considered high risk?
That's what I was.
Yes.
That's what I was looking over here.
So honestly, a lot of the U.S. now is considered endemic for leptospirosis, but there should be maps easily accessible that will tell you what the risk is in your area. And the biggest thing is if it's considered endemic where you live, and you live, anywhere you live, if it's endemic, you really should protect your dogs from it.
Let's see. So Hannah asks, what vaccines are most needed? I think what you just said was parvo, distemper every 3 years, lepto yearly, rabies by law, right? Every
Yep.
3 years. Is there anywhere that says rabies every year anymore, or is it always 3?
No, it's 3. So when a puppy gets vaccinated for rabies for the first time, we have to booster that initial vaccine in 1 year.
Right.
So they're going to get first rabies at around 16 weeks, and then they're going to get another one around a year and a few months. And then after that, it's every 3 years. So the law is also specific about if a dog hasn't had a rabies vaccine in a certain amount of time, you may have to start that over and do 2 a year apart. But no, rabies should be fine to be every 3 years once they've had those first 2.
Right. Yeah, there's this case of those puppies getting rabies recently.
Yes, it's a whole thing in Colorado.
What?
Yeah.
Well, it is. It
Have you
really,
not heard about
kind of.
this?
You don't know about that? Some rescues came in, and a couple of them had rabies.
Yeah, they
And
transferred a litter from Texas to Colorado. Here's what I know. They transferred a litter from Texas to Colorado, and they had all these puppies at like a pet the puppies event. And like get them adopted, and someone adopted, so several of the puppies got adopted, and then one of them was neurologic, and they ended up euthanizing it, and they sent it and confirmed rabies. And then another puppy, I think, started to have symptoms, so they euthanized it. And then now there's all this controversy of like, they sent it for testing and it came back positive, but then the lab was like, maybe it's negative, it might be a false positive, which I don't really understand how that happens, but it's a lot of controversy. And so they had to euthanize the whole litter of
yeah.
like 12 puppies. Very, very sad.
That's really crazy. Somebody asked about titers, and I'm going to post this, and we talked about it just a little bit ago, so that'll be back.
Yeah.
Earlier here. Okay, what we can parlay this into spay and neuter.
Yeah.
I
love to talk about
Unless
this.
you have something, Denise.
The only thing is, several people have asked about flea and tick prevention. Do you have any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should you get the Lyme disease vaccine? What are your thoughts on those things?
Yes. So, we don't have much Lyme here actually where I live and anywhere that I practice. So I haven't had to talk to clients about the Lyme vaccine. What I do know is that it's not as good of a vaccine as like the lepto vaccine is. In areas again where Lyme is endemic, I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's as protective as some of our other vaccines, but I think it's a really good idea for dogs that live, especially like in the Northeast where there's a lot of Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And the person asking about titers, we did talk about titers, but the big thing with titers is you want your vet to be comfortable with them and know, what to do with them. And they can be used. The science about them goes back and forth. And so I think we'll get better at interpreting titers because that's what people want to do.
What's your favorite flea and tick options?
Someone asked me this the other day, and I told them that my favorite flea and tick protection is one that works and one that the owner is comfortable with and the dog handles well. So I don't have like a certain like brand or even formulation of flea and tick prevention that I'm like, oh, that's what you should do, because I do think it's very pet dependent, right? There's a lot of really good options. There's a lot of really effective options. There's a lot of unnecessary drama in the internet land about flea and tick prevention. Fleas and ticks are bad news bears, and that's not a myth. That's not like a money driven scare tactic. They are bad. They cause a lot of issues. They carry nasty diseases, and all natural preventatives just they don't work. And so we're stuck in a situation where we have to use chemicals to prevent fleas and ticks, and that's okay because there's a lot of research that goes into those products to make them as safe as possible. So there's none that I'm like, oh, don't use those, other than like cheap off-brand Walmart, product like flea collars that are not very effective and they're, you know, gross.
Well, I'm at the point, if they had a if they had a tick prevention for people, I would use it because I spent a lot of time in a place where those nasty little fuckers, oh, I'm living longer. Um, it's awful. And you get back from your walk and you got to have your family like do a body exam and they miss it. And then you're 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you feel something. Like you just know. There's just that little feeling. And you leap out of the bed, right? And you're like, it's terrible. My dogs do not have these problems. Now, admittedly, maybe they wouldn't react so strongly, but if I had a pill I could take every 3 months because of my lifestyle, I'd be taking that pill, at least in the time of year.
And then you're paranoid. Do I have alpha gal? Do I have Lyme disease? Do I have Rocky Mountain spotted fever for 3 weeks? Like,
did I get Rocky Mountain spotted fever?
I have.
It's true, though. It's true. Like, I really worry, and I'm not even in an endemic area, but we do have the occasional case. I really worry.
Yeah.
And at least with the dogs, okay, they might get bitten, but it'll probably fall off before they get the disease, right? So I'm like, okay. So they're living a good life. I am not. Yeah. And I used to use Frontline. It doesn't work for me anymore. So where I live.
No. I use Brevecto and sometimes also something else.
Yeah,
like,
so I like oral preventatives. I love the convenience of Brevecto. I actually did a big campaign for Merck about Brevecto. Okay. I think it's a great product. I love the convenience of it. It has really good coverage. The cool thing about Seresto collars, because there's a lot of scare tactics about Seresto. Seresto it has some like repellent action. So I have clients who like hike in the woods a lot with their dogs, or, you know, hunt or whatever, have their dogs like in where they're going to get ticks. And I'll have them on an oral preventative and then have them wear a Seresto collar when they're out in that environment. But yeah, and the combo products that do heartworm, flea, and tick, I think are great. I think we're getting a lot better compliance from pet owners because of it. It's just easier to just remember one thing. There's very few situations where I tell someone, you shouldn't give that. So I think we should use
point about cost benefit analysis. This is what I say every single day. I tell people, the moment you got out of bed in the morning, you started making cost benefit analysis decisions. And you have to consider that for every con, there's a reason it exists. So I chose Brevecto, even though I'm aware I have a breed that's prone to seizuring. I get it. My dogs are not, but I get it. But then you're just weighing it out. I'm saying, what are the odds of a neurological issue versus the very real tick problem I live within? Maybe if I lived in a different circumstance, I would have a different perspective. And with fleas, I didn't know the Frontline wasn't working. And I thought, gosh, my dogs are scratching. Now, I can be slow sometimes. So all I thought was, my dogs are so itchy. They must have dry skin. I mean, the food, I was going, all these complicated things. And then I saw a flea, and I've never seen a flea on my dogs. Like, I never see fleas because you need a lot of fleas before you see a flea, right? I almost had a heart attack. Started looking more carefully. I had a flea infestation. I was beside myself. So the Frontline, I get the Frontline, I put it on. 2 days later, there's no difference at all. And I'm like, wait a second. And the box says, oh, it takes 24 hours. And if you see fleas, they're from the environment. Oh, no. That is not what was going on. So I got the Capstar, killed all the fleas on the dog, did Brevecto. That was the end of it. I'm like, that you're from the environment thing is just, it's a lie. Like, they should not be allowed to say that. It's a lie. You should see a reduction immediately. But anyway, so I'm happy again. Yeah. I found my product. It's working for now.
Yeah, people are all up in arms about the preventatives, and I suppose that's what people are going to do.
It's so crazy to work and, like, people were like, you're going to put Enzo on ProHeart 12. I was like, hell yeah, that's a whole year. Woo! And they're like, it could kill him. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to, as a person who worked in veterinary clinics for 20 years, I can tell you how many dogs we saw that we could prove that they had some sort of, not only like some fatal side effect, but really even just an illness. And I really cannot recall but maybe 1 or 2 dogs that I suspect. I mean, that's out of tens of thousands of dogs. To me, that's a risk that I'm willing to take because I definitely saw a bunch of dogs with heartworms, and I definitely saw what they had to go through. And let me just tell you guys about the needle that has to go in their back.
Yeah, and you want to talk about
their spine.
Yeah, you want to talk about toxic chemicals. Emiticide is like it's just disgusting. Like it's horrible.
Well,
And
didn't they ban one of the drugs for a while several years back, and they had to use like some other.
Oh yeah, it was like the Diraban ban.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to say it. Yeah. Well, so that's scary.
Yes, it is scary. And
Oops, that
something
was a mistake.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Something the general population also doesn't understand is the difference between correlation and causation. So it's like the whole Judy Morgan rant about dog food brands causing all these dogs to be sick. Well, yeah, just because a dog, I mean, any people get sick all the time, dogs get sick all the time, and you could say anything in their life is causing that. Like they eat dog food. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna blame it on the dog food. But just because an illness happens within a certain time frame of a treatment or a food or a medication doesn't mean that was the cause of it. And it's really hard sometimes for people to differentiate those things. They just want to blame it on whatever is the most obvious thing to blame it on.
I think that was our last live, huh, Jerri? You kept saying your individual. We're not talking about your individual experience. She just said it with nicer words than I just did. But basically, there's like how many millions of people in this country? It's actually not about you. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. It's just like, yeah, I understand that was your experience, your singular experience.
Yeah.
That's fine. But that's what it is. It's your singular experience.
From a different person's perspective, say a person that actually works where they would see those things and be able to verify that, oh my God, something is wrong. All these dogs are getting sick. And they're not seeing that ever. People will say things about dogs hanging their heads out of the windows. Okay, I have seen some cases of dogs taking something to the eye. I mean, maybe a couple, but by and large, they blink, and they move their head. I don't know. It's just not something that you would see a lot.
Yeah.
Did you ever see, some of these random things that I think we hear about a bad story or we know a bad story.
Yeah. And people get scared about it. Yeah. And the other thing is people who work in vet med in like an ER setting, they see like the weird, rare, traumatic things that are not happening. The ratio of that injury to the amount of dogs that do XYZ is small in a lot of cases. So I think it's a balance of like, sure, it's good for people to know that's the possibility. So just be sure that's a risk you're willing to take. Right. But yeah, I mean, like you're making me have an epiphany. It's like that we tell people to do the same thing. Like, yes, take that medication. There's a tiny risk of it causing a problem, but you should do it.
Whoa. You made me have an epiphany about the epiphany that I made you have about something different.
I mean, it's different because the dog needs to take medication. A dog doesn't need to hang their head out of the window. But
maybe he does, Molly.
It maybe gives him joy. But
benefit. Cost benefit analysis. And how much does your dog love to do that?
Right.
I got to tell you, my dog, I don't do that. But I see dogs going down the street, and those are some happy dogs with their little tongues lolling out the window. Maybe not their whole head. I'm like, okay. So I'm always asking myself, people, I can't believe you do that. And I'm like, really? I mean, you can't think of one reason except that the person is stupid. I mean, honest to God, people, that's so stupid. You can't think of one reason. Look at the dog. It's a happy dog. Like, not my choice, maybe, but it's not my dog,
Yeah.
Where I live, foxtails. That's the bad one.
Oh, foxtails are bad. Yeah. But like if I ever post a picture of a dog that's hanging out the window or just with the window down, like I took a video of a dog with the Forerunner back window down, and put it on my story. And like all these people are like, you shouldn't post that because people will let their dog fall out of the car. I'm like, okay,
A friend of
whatever.
mine came to visit. This was several years ago, and I had an old dog. She's 16 years old. She didn't want to ride a crate anymore. That's fine. So she was in the backseat of the car because we were going to go for a hike with her. And I picked up my friend from out of town, and she was going to take a video for Facebook because she's kind of a personality on Facebook. I said, you can't post that. She's like, why not? Because my dog's loose in the back of the car. And she's like, I totally get it. I said, you know what? I have a certain number of fights in me a month.
Right.
I don't know, like 5 or 6. I don't have bandwidth for that one today, so no. And it was like, I mean, so much of life is pretty complicated when people think you have to live their life. Like, I'm like, look, that's the problem here. Like, I have to live my life. And sometimes we're going to have things in common, but I am not you. Like, I've got my own problems. You got your problems. I'm glad I don't have your problems. Be happy. But cost-benefit analysis.
You'll find the spectrum of people from everyone that's like me who, like the truck bed people, somebody said it in the comments. They're like, I draw the line at loose dogs in the truck bed. And I'm like, well, you wouldn't make it very far out here in the country. Like, my dog, okay. I don't drive with him on the interstate like that because of obvious reasons, but it's cultural, it's experience, it's, I think it's lifestyle, it's a lot of things. My dog rides in the back of my Jeep. He does not have a harness. He does not have a seatbelt.
Right.
Some people think that that's wildly irresponsible, and I've heard it right and left. I also want to parlay this, and I will not refuse any other conversation. I mean, we can't talk about anything else right now. I hear it right and left about ear cropping too.
Yeah,
I said it, Denise. I said it.
Talk about this.
My secret surprise that I wasn't going to tell you about.
Oh, ear cropping. Oh my God. And by the way, I'm more concerned about your goat riding loose in your Jeep. I saw that. I'm like, that goat is loose in the Jeep. What if you're in an accident? Goat's going to go through the window. And then we have hard decisions to make, huh? Do you bury that goat, cremation, or dinner? What do you do if your goat goes through the window?
It was time for him to go to the vet for his yearly Burning Man that he has at the vet.
Or the goat flies and hits you in the
Woodstock
head.
99.
Oh my
Denise
gosh.
at the vet every year for him, and he burns the whole place down. I'm like, please stop taking me to the small animal side and put me in the bay. I don't want to have. The last time he ate a whole box of Kleenex, and I had to wade through urine that was 6 inches deep. It's terrible. Okay, let's talk about ear cropping, because I worked for ear croppers my whole career, and you know that feeling of when you know something and you worked so hard to make it the best that it could be, and then people who know nothing about it shit all over everything that you're doing, and they don't actually know what the dogs are like when they wake up, when they're recovering, when they get their sutures out, when all of the things. And everybody has a different opinion about it, and I'm going to let you say what your opinion about it is, and I'm not going to be offended if it's different than mine.
I mean, my opinion is I don't do it. I will never do it. I worked at a practice that when I started, there was one doctor that would still do it, and he finally said, I'm not doing this anymore because of the stress. Yeah. Anyway, it's funny.
But we have to stop right there and say why, because it is kind of it's like maybe almost like plastic surgery is an art type of thing, and it's very tedious, and it's very, let's say that you set aside the ethical,
setting, because that's a whole, because I do think it's when you open that box, there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. I think in some ways we pick and choose some things that we've decided are unethical.
That's my stance on it. It's like, I spent my life recovering animals from surgery. I feel like I have a really great judge of who is really suffering and who is feeling hurt and who is feeling, so I've got that. But why is it okay for you to get your dog's balls cut off. You know, like he definitely remembers that at a year old. My dog doesn't even know what happened last week, and he's 14 weeks old, and he's not even going to probably remember this, or the ways that we justify it in our mind. But yeah, I do think that elective has a very subjective definition of what is necessary and what's not.
Yes. Ear cropping for me is hard because it is purely cosmetic.
Yeah. What do you think about tail docking?
So I think, well, there's a lot of tail docking that happens for cosmetic reasons and like breed standard.
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of those breed standards establish for functional reasons, maybe. I think a lot of that though doesn't matter anymore, right? Like it's that, you're whatever, your Yorkie like doesn't.
He's not
your tail
hunting.
doesn't need to be docked.
So you're saying he's not hunting anymore, and he's bashing his tail so hard while he walks down the street in New York City that he's hitting the garbage can, gonna break his tail.
Right.
I used to have Shelties, and we used to glue their ears. You know about this? They want them to tip.
Yeah.
So well, let me tell you, that doesn't come out of the box. A lot of the times you have to make that happen, and it's kind of a process. Like you're gluing and you're doing this and you're doing that. And I decided I never want, after that, and I did my number of dogs like that. First of all, it ruins photos. It ruins puppy photos. Instead of having adorable puppy photos, you got this blob of glue on the top of the dog's head. That sucks. And I think it's really actually uncomfortable for the dogs. They're messing with it all the time. I think it itches and all. And at some point I said, I never want to have a breed anymore that I have to do things. I just want dogs that are natural, right? I don't have to glue and paste and rack and ruin my photos. Just give me a dog that looks like a dog. So now I have dogs that look like dogs.
And I very much live in the camp of most of the time extreme opinions about anything are, in my opinion, are wrong. So I do think the answer lies somewhere in between the extremes, and the answer that's good and the answer that's fair and the answer that accounts for a lot of different things like culture and environment and background and things like that. So I procedures that are purely for cosmetic reasons, I would be great if they just didn't happen. I wish like a lot of it had never started, because now here we are, and there's a lot of breeders who are just doing that because that's what they're supposed to do. One of my favorite breeders, who's a client, her name's Jackie. She's probably not in here, but she knows I love her so much. She breeds dogos, which are such cool dogs. And she doesn't crop her dogs, and they are so cute with their floppy ears.
They're beautiful.
And
dogs.
Yeah. So, I think I would appreciate not even having to think about it, because it's just like in things like that are not necessary. It would be nice, like Denise said, to just not even have to think about it. But it does, like I said, it opens a box of, I personally feel like there are breeds of dogs now it's kind of cruel that they exist, right? And so the person who maybe bought a super brachycephalic dog who has a hard time living life, judging someone because they crop their dog's ears, it's kind of like,
well,
okay.
That's a good point. Yeah, the pot calling the kettle black, right? It's like, And you said something earlier. Everything has an ethical component. It's just what you choose to look at. And do you choose to look at it from your lens or your neighbor's lens? I got myself in all manner of trouble not too long ago because I pointed out that there are medical procedures that are quite painful for the dog. And in my opinion, they are done for the human, because the human can't let their dog go, right? They love their dog so much that they're willing to go to lengths that I would not go. Having said that, I don't judge anybody for their choices. It's not my choice. It's not my dog. That's up to them and their veterinarian and their family and all, right? That's to figure out. And then these same people come down so hard on dog trainers who use techniques I would not use because they are trying to improve the quality of life for the dog. Not choices I would make. using an e-collar for a recall because the dog, they really believe these dogs need to run. Not going to do that. Not my choice. But I'm like, I don't understand how you can support the one and not the other.
Imagine how I feel when people say things to me about Enzo's cropped ears and their dog hasn't left the house for 4 years. But they're on the moral high ground because I'm abusive because I cropped my dog's ears. You know, we do,
Yeah.
when their dog hasn't even, you know, it's like your dog doesn't even remember what it's like to be a dog at all.
Yeah.
That's not better.
Yeah.
You know, we all have our thing. That's not better. Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a slippery slope.
And me as a veterinarian, I carry more responsibility in this conversation.
Oh yeah.
Because sure. I actually have the power to say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right, and that opinion amongst a voice, you know, a consensus of veterinarians, when a bunch of vets start saying, "Hey, I'm not going to do that anymore," and I've told people a lot of times that Enzo's the last dog that I'll have that has cropped ears, not because of, I mean, I have my personal opinions about it, but because I just don't. There would have to be enough veterinarians that kept doing it and doing it well for me to be like, okay, we should keep doing this. This is okay. I don't need to change what I think. And so I just don't see that happening. And so regardless of my personal feelings around it, I have to at least accept that and, you know, just maybe not do it anymore.
Yeah.
Because the alternative would be the next dog I have, he goes to somebody that does a chop, like some disgusting chop job on his ears, and my dog is ruined aesthetically. I mean, which isn't all that makes a dog, but, and then would have to maybe suffer through an infection or, you know, whatever, all those things. So that's
it's the whole conundrum of, because I have been in the field long enough. When I first started was when people were really starting to say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. And it's the whole conundrum of, well, if the vets stop doing it, then people are just going to have Joe Blow down the street do it, and they're going to do a terrible job. And so, which this is part of the conversation with like backyard breeders, Jerry, I know, but because I've listened to you about this, but that's the same thing as people like, well, because I posted about giving breeders discounts recently in vet practices, and people are like, well, if you don't give them discounts, then the irresponsible breeders are going to just not come and keep doing it without coming to the vet, and it's the ethical breeders who are the ones that are going to still come to you because they were coming anyway. So it's the same conundrum of, well, if we say we're not going to do that anymore, we're not going to crop ears anymore, then we realize that may mean there's a wave of dogs who are going to get their ears cropped by, you know, Daryl down the road who doesn't know what he's doing.
Without anesthesia. So I mean, exactly. So that's the thing that always kind of pulls me up short in all of these conversations is, well, what happens if, right? So if you do make something illegal or take it away, I do not doubt that for the majority of people, they're just going to walk away from the practice, but not all of them. And then you really start going, well, what happens to the ones that don't? And it's like so horrifying that I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So that changes things for me, right? Yeah. I mean, at least get yourself a veterinarian who's doing it appropriately and properly and that, you know?
Yeah. And I think you take on globally, like as a profession, when we decide, and in lots of countries it's illegal, but when you decide, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, we recognize there's probably going to be some dogs that get a chop job because we're not doing it anymore, but we're doing this for the greater good in the long term, right? And so some of that is a cost benefit conversation as well, but that's a lot of responsibility.
So there's somebody said polite pause paradise. I'm sorry. In Australia, it's illegal. So it means all discussion surrounding it just stopped. Really such an easy option as took away personal opinions on it. It just doesn't happen anymore. Thank you for saying that and bringing this topic up. Australia and America are wholly unalike in every possible way. Australia is I have lots of clients in Australia. COVID taught us how heavily regulated Australia is. The United States is not like that. There are multiple states in this union that are almost damn near sovereign. So like, we don't, like, I just want to, we have a lot of international discussions here. There's a lot of people from different places. I just want to encourage everyone that we'll just do it like our country. That is not, unless
Not necessarily.
you have some sort of doppelganger country that's across, you know what I mean? It's just, that isn't necessarily always the answer for every place, is all I wanted to say.
It is interesting, like, the United States is, I just saw something, I think the United States is like twice as large as Europe. I mean, it's huge. The United States is huge.
It's like way more than 2 times.
I mean, it kind of depends how you define Europe, like which countries you're including, right? But regardless, there's simply no comparison. So that would be like saying, is one of the states like Georgia or is one of the states like New Jersey? Because those are pretty different. Like the different states in the United States are so different that they're really the equivalent of different countries. And that's, I think, hard for some folks, especially in the more sophisticated Western European countries, to understand. We're not homogenous. We are so far from homogenous.
Yeah.
There are people here, I can't even understand them when they talk because they come from a place that they literally have an American accent that I'm like, oh, I'm missing most of this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's not well understood, just how extreme our diversity is in so many ways. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And that's something people think the United States, but it's not like that. Like if I find out somebody's in the United States, I ask where. And even that only gives me a certain amount of the information. But that is something I think it's important that it's maybe not discussed enough, how different we really are here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What county?
Yeah.
Well, are you guys watching this stuff happen? I don't want to go into it because it's gross, but this guy he did a board and train and he had his dog kill the other dog on purpose. He used a client dog as a bait dog.
No. Where?
Okay, so in Tallahassee County, I want to say Georgia, but somebody will know about it and they'll bring it up. And that county seems to be not too concerned. They finally, on like day 10, I'm on 11, issued a warrant for a misdemeanor arrest. In California, I guarantee you that would have been handled day 1 and it would not have been a misdemeanor. There's a video of it. There is a video of the dog killing the other dog on TikTok. You can see. If you wanted somebody, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
It's in Alabama, people are saying.
Alabama.
I don't know anything about it. That's awful.
It's pretty horrific, but the thing that really came home to me is people are saying when it's that bad, then you start wondering, like, who is all in on this, right? It's like so extreme. And I'm like, well, that's pretty horrific. And I don't think that would happen here. Not the event, but the lack of response from law enforcement that doesn't seem too concerned about it. It's a big country.
No,
it's a big country.
Someone said, I think crimes like that. No, I was involved in the case that the first legislation ever in Kansas to make animal abuse an actual felony. And that was probably almost 20 years ago now. And I remember when it got passed, it was like it didn't really even matter because the criteria was just so outrageous for them to be. I mean, you could get caught fighting dogs 5 times in the city of Wichita, and that blood all over the walls, crazy stuff. And the 6th time, maybe they'd take the dogs away. It was just stuff. Just depends on where you live, and the further south you get, the more animals are going to be viewed as property, or the places where you get with less education. Yeah. It's just the way that it is.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait a second. Yes. I gotta address this. So the real Julian Costello, forcing animals to copulate so you can sell their offspring. If they weed humans, there would be a term for that. I mean, I don't want to be. I think it's okay to say that's on Instagram, but I just want to tell you, you're not forcing it.
Yeah,
I've watched it. They want to do it. It's not a forced situation. You just gotta stand there and let it happen. It just happens all by itself. You don't have to worry about the forcing the animals. I guarantee you.
We're not trying to make fun of you. It's just like
actually, I probably am a little bit. And the reason I'm making fun.
If you want to go there, we can talk about the animals, the animals that need to be You
Let's
know
talk
what,
about
Molly?
it.
What's
Let's
the
talk
word? I
about
can't
snipping.
say the animals that need to be given hand jobs.
What?
Oh my gosh.
Wait, hold on. I was thinking spay neuter. How did you get there, Jerry?
Because
She's
she
saying
said
it is
forced
forced
copulation,
sometimes
and we were
because
like, no, they want to do it. And I was like, well, I can tell you about times they don't want to do it, and you have to get the specimen anyway, and it's a super awkward moment for all involved in the room. So there's a lot of stuff. If we're going to go down that road, okay, well, let's go further down that road. Let's talk about animal testing. Let's talk about this.
I was like, where else can we go?
Yeah, we could go and go and go. So to the person that said that or asked that, it's a slippery slope if we go down there. I hear you.
Okay, can I say something serious to this person? Because that was not nice of me. We need good dogs in society because families need good dogs. There are a lot of families out there that are rescuing dogs because they feel sorry for them. Somebody said they're going to euthanize it.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have a dog in their home that is unsafe to their children, unsafe to their other pets, unsafe to their neighborhoods. This is not the exception. I'm not just making something up, one dog in a million. There's an endemic problem of dogs in homes that should never have been placed in those homes because they needed a home and the person felt sorry for them. And it creates an incredible amount of distress for this family who is very likely never to bring in another dog because now they have this dog that runs their life for 10 to 15 years because it was not born with the temperament that was well suited to the world that we live in right now. Because of that, if we don't start providing highly adoptable dogs as companion animals are going to be in big trouble because people don't want dogs in their homes that are a danger to their situations. And I'm not making this up. This is a problem. It is a big problem. It is a common thing. And in my opinion, that problem escalated at the same time that breeders started getting pounded hard and stopped breeding. Breeding is way down.
It is so
the number
down.
Way down. It's hard to get a well-bred, ethically bred. Oh God, I can't believe I just said that word. But anyway, we're going to let that go. It's hard to get a dog that's bred for the things I want. I want a healthy dog with a solid temperament who likes to do things with me. That's what I'm looking for. Right now, in the shelter near me, I have a very close connection with this shelter. You're right. There's lots and lots of dogs, and they're not highly adoptable dogs. They have issues of a type. They're not just going to be loved away. It's not a matter of getting them in a home with somebody who just loves them more. They are going to require intensive management and training that most people cannot give because they don't have the time or the resources. So it's very unkind, in my opinion, for you to say that people should just go and adopt these dogs to keep the dogs alive when the dogs are no longer of a type that add quality of life to their families. It has to be a two-way street. So that's my soapbox.
Mm.
and I see that. I am with you because I see it all day long. I see people come in with dogs they have adopted who the dog is miserable because they're just losing their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the people are miserable because their dog is losing their mind and bit them, or they can't walk down the street, And I work with local trainers. I work a lot very closely with Kevin at Full Circle. I send a lot of dogs to Kevin, and Kevin does great work. And a lot of the dogs are dogs that people got that they just didn't know what they were signing up for because they walked in a building and got the dog. And that is it's very tricky. And, I have a black lab who I bought from a breeder, and
We all have dogs that we bought from breeders.
Yeah,
by the way. That tells you guys something. It's not because we're devoid of moral character. It's because we thought long and hard about the type of dog that we wanted, what would fit our family, and then we sought out the right breeder and got the dog that was right for us. That was not a mistake.
And I have correct, and I have had probably 10 to 12 Labrador retrievers be a part of my life throughout my childhood because my parents, my dad is a duck hunter, and so it started out with duck dogs, but really they just were our pet, but we had lab after lab after lab after lab, and none of them were bad dogs. They were all amazing
Yeah.
dogs. And I do think it's very important, like Denise said, that the dog fits the home. And I think it is getting harder to find that. And breeding is part of the problem there, because this whole breeding popularity of the doodles is such an issue. And that is where I see people getting dogs that they paid $3,000 for, who have no business being in their home.
I
And they
have a
had
lot of doodle owners. Yeah.
yes,
Doodles and bullies.
and they had no idea what they were signing up for. Not that long ago, I had a lady in the exam room with me. She was having a literal panic attack. Like, she was having a nervous breakdown in the exam room because she was so stressed out about this horrible poodle mix that she has. And she just like word vomited, like, I don't know what we were thinking. Why does anybody have these dogs? This is terrible. I don't know what to do. I finally had to tell her, leave the dog with me for the day. I need you to come back at 4 p.m. Like, go, girl, wash
decompress
your
from each other a little bit.
yeah. And I hear it all day long. And you know, the poodle mix breeding has become very convenient breeding. It's a convenient thing to do, and sell $3,000 to $5,000 dogs. And so it's the same issue, just they're not the shelter dogs, but they end up in the shelter because people get rid of them.
Like I think and I can see what's happening in the comments. Denise is not saying that there's not great dogs at the shelter at all.
You see that?
Look,
that's my little mutt. He's a rescue. I'm not anti-rescue.
I do get what you guys are saying, like, hey, let's watch the narrative around that. But did you hear what Dr. Molly just said? That then those dogs end up in the shelter. Like, we're trying to just talk about the whole cycle and how this all actually happens, and that there's not one place to blame. It's not the dogs in the shelter. It's not just the parents. It's not just the breeders. It's all of the whole thing. There's a lot of moving parts to it.
Yeah.
So if we get why it's happening, okay, so who sees all the dogs no matter what? Always the vet. Always the vet. The vet sees more dogs than the trainers. Always. And so if we know that the vets are seeing doodles come in, and then doodles, they're not seeing any old doodles, if you know what I mean. I can't even think of one elderly doodle I've ever seen now.
Man, you guys have such a different experience. I have only good experience with doodles. Oh my God, I find them to be the cutest dogs out there, the best natured dogs. There are no doodles in the shelter where I live. None, because they get snapped right up. People love their doodles. So I don't know. Not, just to be clear, I have no issues with getting dogs from shelters. I think it's great. Here's the problem. Everybody needs to be honest. The rescues need to be honest, and the shelters need to be honest. Tell me what this dog is about. Don't place a dog that's reactive in a home, and don't bother to tell the people, oh, by the way, this dog doesn't like dogs, because there's a lot of that going on. So you go to the shelters, and right now it's really hard to find a dog. Right now, it could be different, and 2 years ago it was different, and it's evolving. Don't take a dog that doesn't fit your family, and don't tell somebody else to take a dog that doesn't fit the family. I have no issues having a rescue dog. I love my rescue dog. And, you know, he's actually a really nice dog. I got him in Texas. He's got no issues. I mean, he's got, you know, every dog's a dog, right? But he has nothing serious. There's nothing wrong with getting a rescue. It's great. But don't take a rescue dog because you feel sorry for it. Because if you think you're going to just fix it, you might find, unless that's your thing. Some people love fixing things. But if that's not your thing, I'd go to a dog breeder myself. If what you just want is the right family companion, your odds are higher of going to a dog breeder, or get an adult dog from a rescue that you know tells the truth. Yeah. Or even better, foster to adopt.
We can't put our foot down about going out and not getting dogs from breeders at the same time that everybody's going around and having babies and not going out and adopting children. You know, like, where are we? Like, it's not. It's just like this weird kind of form of virtue signaling that we learn to do, to be like, well, I rescued this dog, and it's like, but you weren't even ready for a dog in your life. You haven't taught your children anything about being around a dog, and now they're grabbing a freaking shelter dog who is traumatized and trying to navigate in a new family, grabbing it by the face and screaming into its face. That's what we're saying. Like, if your life isn't set up to receive a foster child, please don't do that to them, because it's, you're creating difficulty in a life of somebody that's already struggling. I think that's maybe a better message. But if you're ready to be a foster parent, you better get your ass out there, because there's work to be done.
Because we need you. Yeah, and people in the comments are, I think, probably a little upset about my doodle rant. I do see people, the doodle people get very upset.
I like doodles, so
there are lots of doodles.
I think we all like them
I
in
like
general.
doodles. I like doodles. I don't dislike doodles. I take a lot of issue with everything I just said. And someone's like, "Oh, there's no doodles in my shelter." There are less doodles in shelters than there are bully breeds or mixed breed dogs, whatever. Of course, there's less doodles, because guess what? A lot of people paid $5,000 for their doodles. So guess what? They're going to suffer their whole life with them.
That actually could be true. However, it is pick your poison, right? If you want to get it, no. But the other thing I've noticed, have you ever noticed how many doodle people have more than one?
Yeah.
So they must be pretty happy. So I figure, I went on Pet Finder one day.
I know why. A lot of people have a good doodle, and then they get a really bad doodle. And they're like, WTF, my first doodle was so good. I don't know what's happening.
It's a bad dog. Well, what I did when I was investigating the doodle problem, because I used to be anti-doodle, and then I just decided to research it. And here's the things I learned. Lowest health insurance rates. The lowest. When you put in you have a doodle mix, I'm like, well, that tells me something right there, because, put in pug and see what you get. Then I put in...
have extra insurance with the bully.
Well...
And he's fantastic.
So I checked that. The second thing I went to was Pet Finder, and I searched for purebred poodle. Hundreds came up. I searched purebred goldens. Hundreds came up. I tried doodle. Squat. I mean, there was a few, of course. But I'm like, well, wait a second. That's out of whack, because there's a whole lot of doodles out there. So that tells me that either people are happy, or Molly, like you said, damn it, I paid so much money. I'm keeping this dog, but you know what? It's not my problem either. If it's in your home and you're managing to make it work, hey, more power to you. I'm like, I have a hard time being, I see a lot of happy doodle people. So I'm like, when I stop seeing that, I'll say more. My breed, that's a mess. Belgians, oh my God, they are flooding the shelters, and they are not adoptable. They are straight up. But I always ask.
Pyrenees too.
Yeah,
Great Pyrenees are all in the shelters too, and it's heartbreaking.
My shelter has a lot.
And
I keep saying, if you get one that you think is a good, solid pet, like, let me know, and I'll see, I'll keep an eye open, because I'm in the area, and they just keep telling me, Denise, the dogs we're getting are dangerous dogs. They are not adoptable to families. And I'm just heartbroken, because this is my breed. I love my breed.
Yeah.
And they are so flooding the shelters, which is killing me. And I still think that good dog breeders of Belgians need to keep breeding good Belgians. I still believe that. Because people like me really love this breed, but I can't go to the shelter and adopt a dangerous dog. I have a family.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's why I don't do it. When people ask me, they're like, why don't you rescue dogs? I'm like, because I've had small children for 20 years. I'm sorry, that answer needs to be okay with everyone.
And I also think, it's sometimes it's like taboo for me as a veterinarian in this space to even talk about breeders, which is very annoying to me. There's only 84 people watching this right now, but
they'll hear it.
Yeah. The ethics of breeding, that's a whole different conversation. But I do think this is all circular. So what veterinarians do or don't do affects what breeders do and don't do. And what people who want to have dogs do and don't do affects what breeders do even more heavily, because it's like this whole conversation I was having on my page about giving breeders discounts as vet clinics, these huge discounts. And And people are like, well, people are still going to buy those dogs. It's like, okay, well, maybe people should be better educated and more selective about, yeah, you should only, if you're going to buy a dog from a breeder, we should be able to tell them, here are the things that you should be looking for to determine if this is a breeder you want to buy a dog from, if this is a dog you want to buy. And, you know, dog breeding is a part, it has economics. So there's such thing as supply and demand. And so if people wake up and they stop buying dogs from breeders who aren't doing XYZ, then they're going to stop breeding eventually. And that's a lot of power. But it is circular. And I think I should be able to educate people on, here's what you should be looking for. Here's what you should be, saying, I'm not going to use that breeder. And I think that breeders should also be very selective about the families that take their dogs.
They
that buy their dogs.
often are.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are pretty darn strict, but I mean, you've kind of alluded to it. The fact is there are a handful of breeds that I would never have, even though I could think of a couple that I like very much, because the health situation is such that it doesn't matter if it's a backyard breeder or what, the health issues are so deep in a few of the breeds out there that I would never personally choose to have one. And then I see my friends getting them, and I'm not, that's their choice. I don't tell people what they should buy. That's not my thing. And then I realized they actually don't know. So then they're like surprised when their dog gets this thing that 80% of the breed gets anyway at 6 years of age. And I'm like, they didn't know. I don't even know how these can just pass people by. But you guys, if you get a purebred dog, I don't care where you get it, research it. And if you get a mixed breed and you know the parents, well, you should at least know that if hip dysplasia is a huge issue in one of the parent breeds, even your mixed breed is kind of at risk. So, picking your poison.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to comment on something somebody up the thread said. Best way to get a rescue is foster to adopt. I agree 1,000,000%. Foster the dog and then see if it's the right dog for your family. Because once you adopt it, the dynamic is radically different. So that's and also some shelters have these programs where you can take the dog out for the weekend, which is just super sweet. And it's really healthy for the dog. Some dogs just really need to get out because being in the shelter is ruining them. So if you have a weekend and you're going to take the dogs to the beach, go get a dog. See if your shelter does it. It's a super nice thing to do. And they've done research. And when the dog goes back, they're still better off. It's not like, oh, my God, you showed them the good life and sent them back. It's not like that. So there's your good deed if you have a free day. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah. And education about what to look for in a dog that you're going to rescue is equally as important. If you want to rescue a dog, great. For your lifestyle, here's what makes sense. Here's what you should be looking for. Here's the questions you should ask. Here's what you should be observing when you're fostering them for 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah.
And check those reviews on Facebook. If you find a rescue and every dog that comes back, they explain why the family ruined the dog. Guys, that is a heads up. We all have to get past that. It's all in how you raise them. Like, you got to know that genetics matters. Genetics is a thing. It's an important thing. Yeah, I mean, don't be a fool about raising them. But I'm just saying, I've seen some dogs raised pretty terribly that once taken out of that situation were shockingly stable. Labradors come to mind, by the way. It's like raised in the dungeon, out in the light for 3 days. They're like, God, this is great. My lifestyle. My breed, Belgians, you raise them with so much care. You do everything right. And one day, a pot falls off the stove on the wrong day. And for the rest of their lives, they won't walk through your kitchen. That's genetic.
Yeah, that sounds like a German Shepherd, too.
Exactly.
Like that.
Oh.
And I love them to bits. But, I mean, my God, I go in with my eyes open. Yeah. That reminds me of the story. So my little terrier dog, when I got him, I was, of course, coddling him because I coddle my Belgians because you don't want anything bad to happen to him. And he was like 4 months old. He'd been through a lot of homes. And okay. So I take him somewhere, and by just sheer bad luck, there's this dog in a crate that roars at him, when he walks by. And my brain, in 1 second, had flashbacks to how this dog would never recover, would be reacting, you know what I mean? No, I've never had a terrier. That 4-month-old dog puffed up, turned around and said, "Who said that?" And he saw a German Shepherd that had nothing to do with it, that was 20 feet away. And he gets up on his toes and he starts screaming at this German Shepherd. And I'm like, my brain was like doing this 180 going, oh my God, you're not in Kansas anymore. Like, you know what I mean? It was just like, whoa, man, That's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
It's genetics, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
genetics in a heart. That happened to my Belgian.
About terriers.
Oh,
That's
they're so resilient.
Yep.
They're so resilient.
They're little Napoleons. And see,
I love it.
we see all these dog breeds and tendencies in the stressful situation, right? I see how a dog handles a stressful situation all day, every day. And I do tell my clients, like, sometimes people act embarrassed if their dog is nervous. And I'm like, why are you embarrassed? Your dog's in a weird place. They don't know why they're here. They don't know who I am. This is very weird. It's normal for them to act abnormally or different from they do at home. But what I do tell people is that when I see your dog respond to this stressful situation with aggression or whatever, I see what your dog is capable of. And so I'm letting you know that because your dog could be in a stressful situation at home that will bring this side out of them. I know it's possible for them to try to bite someone who they're afraid of. And they could be afraid of your child next week. And and we see that. So it's like the doodle thing. I see so many doodles in the vet clinic. The owner says, oh, they're just like a spazzy dog, whatever. But that spaz becomes real aggression and they will hurt someone when they're in that heightened, stressful,
Arousal. Yeah.
reactive situation. Yeah. And so, yes, when they're aroused. So we see such a unique side of it. And you two see that because you're working with dogs where someone finally has acknowledged, okay, I need help with this. But we see like the kind of run of the mill stressful situation and what they do. And there are trends with different breeds. It is genetics. It is a trend.
I love that I never even thought about that, but I love that you pointed out that how a dog responds to stress in one environment is incredibly good information. And sometimes you just need to know it. Like once the person knows that under stress, these are the things your dog might do, it may be very manageable because hopefully people's dogs aren't living incredibly stressful lives all the time. But once you know that, when you have a party and your friends come over and they're going to be rolling drunk by midnight, get the dog out of the situation. That's a dog that cannot be loose in the house at that time. And just knowledge is power, right? Once you know, it's not like it's horrible, I got to send the dog back. It's like, but now you know. So now you can start thinking things through pretty carefully and make some good decisions. Maybe the dog shouldn't be in your home. I don't know what your situation is, but I think that's great. And I never really thought about how a dog's reaction at the vet could actually be a real window into more, which is super. I do have a question, Molly. How do you handle dogs in your waiting room? Like, how do you make that intelligent, or can you?
So the way I handle it in the practice I work right now is different from how I would do it if I could just, create the practice I want to look exactly what I want. We try to keep them out of the waiting room as much as possible because all that's doing is winding them up if they're prone to that. We don't we don't have really any fighting in the waiting room because we try not to have dogs right next to each other sitting there. But I think the longer you have dogs sitting in the waiting room, there are so many stressors around them that's just setting you up for failure when they finally get to the exam room and or the treatment area. Because now they've been in a car, which is stressful for a lot of dogs. Then they've sat in a waiting room, which is a different environment, also stressful for a lot of dogs. Then they go in an exam room that's different, stressful for a lot of dogs. And then they go back to a different room. So that's 4 different places they've been away from their home in an hour, right? And so I have a lot of thoughts about this, but there's ways to make waiting rooms in vet clinics less stressful. Um, I like some of the newer kind of open concept vet world things, but open concept, honestly, I don't think is great for dog stress either. And so I really love the idea of a dog going pretty much straight into an exam room and bypassing a waiting room situation. That would be my preference. And I do think, honestly, during COVID, when we were curbside, I feel like dogs were less stressed, and a lot of people wanted to say, oh, it's because like they weren't with their owners. I don't think that's why. I think it's because they went straight from their car to an exam room for us to just immediately see them. So they were in the clinic for less time, and they weren't waiting on me.
You know what I do when I go to the vet? I leave my dog in the car, I go in, I check in, I do my paperwork, and I tell them, let me know when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, we're ready. I go out, I get my dog. I don't make anybody delay, and I go straight in. And I've never had a vet have a problem. And then the reverse. When I leave, I say, can I put my dog away and come back and pay? Of course you can. And so I don't, because I just see the strangest things in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear to God, I'll see a person with like two dogs on those, those double leashes. So the dogs are kind of going opposite directions and they're like, it's just like all over the waiting room. And I'm like, I mean, I can't get away. You're trying to hide in the corner and everybody's agitated.
Yeah.
So I'm like, my dog doesn't need to be in here. Yeah. And I've not had a vet complain because I'm quick. I'm quick.
No, I can't even think of a reason why a vet would care about that other than you're just not doing what they told you to do necessarily. But I send my clients with their dog. I'm like, why don't you go start the car, put the dog in the car, and then come back to pay? Yeah. All the time. I hate for them to go wait up front with their dog. I don't want clients to wait to pay anyway. That's a different conversation. But yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think anybody with a dog that's gets stressed should definitely consider doing that. And your vet shouldn't care. If they care, tell them to call me.
You call Dr. Molly. She told me to have you call. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, and like cats too. Like, man, we were talking all about dogs, but cats is the same thing. Like they're sitting even though they're in a carrier, like they're very aware of all of their surroundings. So it's the same idea.
Those are funny in the comments.
I know. What are people saying?
Oh, they're just being funny and entertaining as they always are and agreeing.
They're doing good. They're chatting about rescues and doodles. I'm not seeing the doodle hate. That kind of surprises me because I've seen some intense doodle hate in the dog world. I'm not seeing it today, though. That's nice.
Yeah, good.
Intense doodle hate.
Yeah, so I just don't want to see anybody hating on anyone.
Let's finish our conversation with the spay and neuter.
Okay.
Conversation, because everybody wants to know.
Okay, I'm just going to give you my spiel. Yeah. Here's what I tell people that walk in the clinic. For a long time, the research said that there was a lot of benefit to spaying female dogs before puberty, before they go into their first heat cycle. Mm-hmm. And that research has not changed. It is still true that there is benefit to reducing the risk of mammary cancer if we spay dogs. Definitely before their first heat cycle. We still get some benefit before their second and a little bit more still before their third cycle. Okay. So you're getting some benefit of protecting against mammary cancer if you spay your female dog before their third heat cycle. In males, the main reason we went ahead and neutered them at 6 months was for population control. That's really the main reason in males. So fast forward over the last 10 years, there is new research that's coming out that says there is probably some significant benefit for certain dogs to waiting longer than we have traditionally been doing. The population
benefits are?
Those benefits are decreased risk of orthopedic diseases and some cancers, is what the research shows so far. And I try to practice very evidence-based medicine, but I also try to use my brain and logic and reason. And so what I tell people is based on the research, if you have a small dog, like less than 50 pounds, less than 40 pounds for sure. 40 to 60 pounds is kind of the gray area, but less than 40 pounds. I am not convinced by any research that there really is any significant benefit to waiting longer than 6 months to spay their dog. I think the benefit of reducing the risk of mammary cancer is still, that cost benefit analysis. I still think that that is really important. And there's also a risk in females of them getting a uterine infection called a pyometra. And the older they get, the more at risk they are for that.
Gross.
They're
too,
so
everyone.
gross.
It's terrible. And they can die.
Yes.
It's serious.
It's serious. It is very expensive.
Yeah.
It is dangerous. It is involved. It can be fatal. So really, females are the real kind of difficult conversation in males. So male and female, if they're going to be less than 40 pounds at maturity, I tell people, if you want to go ahead and spay and neuter them at 6 to 8 months because you don't want to deal with heat cycles, you want to get the mammary cancer benefit, and you don't want your male dog peeing on everything or getting prostate issues, whatever, I think it's perfectly great to go ahead and spay and neuter them. It also helps with population control because accidents do happen. Just a few months ago, I had a client with a little like poodle mixed dog that got impregnated by a Pomeranian male at daycare. So like
a Pomadoodle.
Yes, it was a Pomadoodle. We spayed her the next week, but so
no
for little
Pomadoodle.
dogs, no Pomadoodles. So for little dogs, that's my answer, and it's pretty straightforward. Like if you want to wait, we can talk about that, but I don't see any really medical reason to do that. Now, in bigger dogs, the conversation completely changes. So in large female dogs, what I recommend to my client, unless they're like giant breed dogs, so unless we're talking about like a Dogo, a Great Dane, a Mastiff, something like that, I tell people we try to get the best of both worlds. So a lot of those patients, I'll tell them, let's see when we get to a year old what has happened. If we've had a heat cycle, then I try to time spaying them as close as I can to their second heat cycle without letting them go into heat again. So if we have dogs, occasionally I'll have a big dog who hasn't had a heat cycle yet at a year old. And so I'll tell people, if we get to a year old, we haven't had a heat cycle, you might want to consider going ahead and spaying them because you get both benefits. You've waited until they're more mature to do it, so you get the orthopedic benefit. And we're also doing it before their first heat cycle, so you're getting the mammary cancer benefit. And then if they have a heat cycle before a year old and then we time it, we try to do it before their second heat cycle, you're still getting some of both benefits. So it is a gray area, but that's how I explain it to female large dog owners. And in giant breeds, I'm usually telling them, let's wait 2 cycles and just make sure we get them spayed before their third cycle. So those dogs are being spayed more like 18 to 24 months. And in the males, I feel very strongly that if a family can responsibly keep their large breed male dog in check and not let them run off and get hit by a car or impregnate other dogs, that I think it's a very good idea to wait to neuter them until at least 18 months old.
So I saw a chart, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months ago that I think was put out by AVMA. And it was all the breeds, or not all, but many, 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 many breeds, and then male, female, and then the recommended age of spaying and neutering, which I found really interesting.
It's interesting.
Have you seen? Well, of course you have.
Yes. So UC Davis had a lot to do with that. It is interesting. It's confusing. The chart can be confusing. I mean, it's not confusing, but the numbers are kind of all over the place. And so it's like, okay, like let me look at my breed. Well, my dog has 5 breeds in it. So which one do I do? And that chart it's based on a couple different studies. There's some breeds that say never to spay and neuter them. Did you see that?
I saw
like golden retrievers.
So I am very concerned about pet overpopulation.
Mm-hmm.
And remember how we were talking about culture? In this country, I understand that in Europe they don't tend to spay and neuter, but once again, the culture of Europe is very different. I have huge qualms about many, many people in the United States being able to responsibly keep intact their dogs, especially if they have multiple dogs and they have males and females. And just so you know, having had an intact male and an intact female, that was like 3 days, just put my head in a bucket. It was so horrible living here during that time. Nobody got pregnant. That's not the point. I think in this country, we should never underestimate we need to recognize that pet overpopulation is a thing. It's a problem. And it should absolutely always remain in the conversation, not just the health of the individual pet.
Yeah. And that chart, and that is obviously I agree with you. And that chart is solely based on that science, right? And if we only do things because of just what the research says. We're not using our brains really, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a logic and reason that goes into every medical decision that any medical professional makes, and especially in the veterinary field, because we're asking another human to make a decision for our actual patients, right? And so everything, and a patient who is considered property by a lot of states in the US. So it's a tricky triangle that we balance as vet med, and that's why it's really important that we have these conversations with pet owners that acknowledge the science, but also the logic and the reason and the reality, which is a lot of people cannot keep their dogs from either impregnating other dogs or becoming pregnant.
Sometimes, you got some little kids and they open the wrong door at the wrong time. This one always has to be in the crate. You're telling that to an 8-year-old? Good luck with that. I mean, it's hard to have intact dogs when you have multiple sites. It's just very front and center in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a big, people talk about this a lot right now, right? And it's just like pet food, which we're not talking about tonight, but people are talking about pet food all the time too, right? And what dogs eat, and when you spay and neuter them, those are important things, but those are not the majority of what makes a dog healthy or unhealthy, or a good dog or not. And so I think it's really important for people to have some perspective about what we're talking about. There's so many people who rescue dogs who had pediatric spay neuter. Was that the best thing for the dog? No, it wasn't. But when the dog's 10, they're probably not going to be thinking like, "Oh man, I wish this dog hadn't been spayed when it was 4 months old." So, there is some dramatization of some of these things. They're important, but they're not the whole picture. And people need to calm down just a titch about some of it.
So somebody in the, I answered it, but I want to make sure that we elaborate on it. Somebody was like, "Hey, can neutering cause reactivity? My dog got neutered, and now they're falling into the descents of hell." And we are almost going to lose Molly because she's in Eastern time. I'm in Central.
I know. I'm getting very dark.
Sunshiny California.
I can't go inside because the children.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the kids will. So, can you dispel a myth there? And then maybe Denise can follow up with some, talking about fear periods and how that generally coincides with the time people choose to neuter or things like that. But neutering in and of itself, removing a dog's testicles, is that going to suddenly cause reactivity in a dog?
So,
From a medical standpoint.
I actually just learned about a paper, a study. You're not expecting this answer from me. I was actually just reading about a study that may correlate the decrease in testosterone with some reactivity because of fearful issues.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
It's not going to make them aggressive. No. And I tell people it's not going to fix your dog's behavioral problems. One. So it ain't brain surgery. It is just testicle surgery. So it's not going to fix their behavioral problems. It may take some of their tendencies away that may help you fix their behavioral problems, but it's not going to fix them. And no, it's not going to suddenly make your dog reactive. Is there some correlation to some issues? Maybe, we don't know, maybe, but no, it's not making your dog reactive. And some people ask me, "Oh, is the traumatic experience of getting neutered gonna change them?" And it's not.
Yeah.
So there is definitely an issue. Testosterone does give confidence. So if a dog's reactivity is based in fearful behavior and you take away testosterone, it can impact the dog. It didn't cause the reactivity. It allowed the reactivity was inside the dog to come out.
So I actually would be a little careful about neutering a male that had fear-based reactivity. I would at least be thinking about it in the big picture. And in females, there are hormones associated with, mothering, caring, estrogen. When you're taking that away, you are potentially increasing the risk for aggression in females. I learned that from a friend who works in a shelter.
That is based in science, and I have been reading about it.
Yeah, the male one intrigues me because I've seen an awful lot of people neuter for various reasons at older ages. And what I've seen, it improves marking in the house. That's just my personal experience. When people have problems with their dogs marking in the house and they neuter, that often goes way down or it's eliminated. Dogs that roam, dogs that are trying to get to the fence, always trying to get out, they stop doing that. I've observed that. I've observed that dogs that are extremely interested in other dogs, like that obsessive staring, that goes away. They stop doing that because they're not like, is it a boy, is it a girl? And I'm thinking of one lady, her dog was reactive, but only to other intact males. Neutering solved that immediately. Yeah. Because the reason the dog had an issue with other intact males is because now there was a conversation, right? Like, hey, wait a second, there's a girl over there. Who's going to get her? And unfortunately, my friend's dog was not a very confident dog, but still felt like he had to be in the game. You know what I mean? Like, I have to care. After he was neutered, didn't care anymore, so that was off the table. Yeah. My own male is intact, and I think it contributes to his confidence, and I think it actually contributes to his good behavior with other dogs, because I think he thinks he rules the world. And I think other dogs sense that and don't give him grief. I think some dogs, when they're a little bit softer, others take advantage, kind of come in and they get bullying, So I think there is all kinds of really interesting and complex possible interactions between spaying and neutering. And there's stuff you can look at, there's stuff you can research, but I think it can't be generalized to a group because there's so many, like, what issue are you having? Like, I know in the old days, they're like, if your dog was aggressive, neuter it. I mean, there's only so many dogs that are aggressive because of status seeking. That's definitely not a common, right? I mean, it can happen, but I wouldn't say it's a complicated one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard one.
Yeah. And everything you just talked about, those are hormonal drives.
Yeah.
And so you get the benefit of taking those away, but I think we're finding that there can be a cost. And so in the same token, and so it's balancing the science and the medicine with reason, logic, and reality, which is okay. Yeah, but this person cannot keep this dog inside. It's going to get hit by a car. It's going to run off and get hit by a car, and that's worse for the dog and the people. So
no, they're dead. That would definitely be worse.
That's worse.
Yeah,
that's worse. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, last thing I'm going to say is when you were talking about the reactivity is there, it's underlying, and when you take those hormones away, that can come to the surface. I just can't help but just point out an analogy to what we were talking about earlier, flea and tick prevention and seizures. Mm-hmm. So it's a perfect analogy to the fear that people have about flea and tick preventative causing seizures in their dogs. Mm-hmm. So for the 90 people that are listening, if you take one thing from this, understand that Florilander flea tick prevention lowers the seizure threshold. So those medications do not give dogs seizures. They lower their seizure threshold. So if they have an underlying seizure condition, maybe they've never had a seizure because their threshold's never been lowered that much. Mm-hmm. Then they can have a seizure because the threshold has been lowered. The medicine didn't give them seizures. Wow. It lowered their threshold, which allowed them to have a seizure. So I just, it's the same idea, different topic, but I just couldn't. Wow. Oh, it's the same. So. Yeah.
Super important.
Fun fact.
We did.
All did. Yeah.
So flea and tick prevention unmasks seizure conditions in some dogs. It does. It just tells us they have a seizure condition and we're not going to give it anymore. And they may not ever have a seizure again. But that's all it's doing. It's not causing them.
This has been so fun.
I know.
I feel like I learned a lot too.
Jerri,
I definitely did.
We're good at this, Jerri. We're good at picking people, and this is so fun.
I think that we are. And
Let's do it again.
Television show.
Totally.
Well, Molly, thank you so much for coming. We're all going to be continuing to watch the hilarious videos that you put out. And if you guys don't,
today.
You just did one today?
Mm-hmm. We did more dog breeds walking on the
I'm excited. Those are my favorite.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
Favorite. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good night. Bye,
Thank
Denise.
you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye, Denise.
Bye,
So
Molly.
good to meet you. Bye.
Bye.